This is a reading from the Autobiography of Maria Valtorta. Fifth part. These are the ones who have come from the great tribulation, and have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. Revelations chapter 7, verse 14. When I am raised up, I shall draw all men to myself. John chapter 12, verse 32. Suffering more and more, I went forward. I believed that everything would soon be consummated. Human impatience, how foolish you are in regard to the divine calm of the eternal. The third talk was on the fight against tuberculosis, as it had been the year before. No, that's not right. The third one was on Sister Benigna Consolata Ferrero, and the fourth on the anti-TB day, coupled with Catholic University Day, since the two came very close together. Then the contest exams with excellent results. The members loved me very much. I was a mother to them, more than a teacher. They kept no secrets from me. Indeed, even if they had kept some, it would have done no good. A gift of God made me aware of every novelty, and I would thus call a girl to me and ask, "What's disturbing you?" On seeing herself found out, believing that I knew everything, through a supernatural force, she would speak. But I did not know everything. I understood only in general terms, if she was pained, restless, or tempted, and that's all. Their trust, however, gave me an opportunity to care for their souls, to guide and comfort them. I bless God for having allowed my fellows to seek solace in me with all their sorrows. I can therefore understand, sympathize with, and comfort the sufferings of others. To understand hearts, what a difficult art! It is not learned in any human school. Only the light coming from non-human sources, which is helped to bear fruit by a deeply meditative spirit and goodness of heart, can teach this science, offering such comfort. Being understood in an hour of pain often means being saved. Saved from ugly surprises, saved from dangerous falls, and finally, saved from moments of despair which cut off the soul, if they do not also kill it. At all ages it is necessary to be understood, but especially at that delicate age going from adolescence to the threshold of maturity. It is then that hearts are most prone to seductions, chimeras, and storms. Like tender young trees preparing for their first flowering, they are inclined to be uprooted by a brutal hand, broken by an excessively hard blow, burned by excessive heat, rotted by too much stagnant water, or denuded by an excessively stormy wind, twisting them in its whirling vortex. Hearts should be made virile in their first blooming, instructed on what can harm them, supported if too weak, so they will not bend, pruned if too exuberant in leaves and affections, they expand too fast in a prodigality which exhausts them before they bear fruit, fertilized if too dry, stripped if already invaded by parasites, and above all, loved and loved. A heart which feels loved speaks, and by speaking it provides the occasion for one who loves it and is more expert than it is to guide it. We ought always to have the heart of a father or mother for those who are younger than we, and at certain times it is not also necessary to have such a heart for those who are older. For hearts have no age. They are eternal, like God, and there is ever a need for tenderness, counsel, and comfort at all of life's ages. In reality, there are very few hearts that are able to love, and by loving, to understand, and then most rare are those who, now elderly, can remember that they too were young. In our time this was not done. In our time no one did that. This is the scornful assertion which is always on the lips of adults as regards the young. It is a lie. I won't go into the big sins, for those have always existed as well. A proof of it are the foundling hospitals, the rotas, and so on, in use since the Middle Ages, as witnessed to by the episode with Francesca da Rimini, by all the royal mistresses, and by all the Agerian nymphs of poets and chiefs of state, just to mention things familiar even to simpletons. But I am referring to less serious things, having a boyfriend behind father's and mother's back, disturbing friendships, and reading materials, including those produced illegally, frivolity in dyeing and curling one's hair, and so forth. For goodness sake, I think that ever since Eve, on all continents and at every meridian and parallel of the globe, such things have been found. Why thunder then like so many Savonarolas against the current generation, when yesterday their dear mothers and the day before their dear grandmothers met and corresponded with their dear fathers and grandfathers, then daring youths, by way of a wireless telephone and telegraph based on glances and matches lit and put out according to a conventional language, or sending little cards through the obligingness of a fine thread which, on the poorly illuminated streets of 40 years ago, served as a go-between postman. Why then act like Lenten preachers against the permanent and rouge if, in their time, they kept their heads covered with a whole architecture of hairpieces and coated themselves with powder like little fish ready to be fried? The pallor of the heroines of Romanticism was fashionable then. Now women like to appear as mulattoes or redskins. Well, the color has changed, but makeup exists now as then. Instead of thundering and preaching by telling solemn lies and as a result leading our daughters to engage in double subterfuges and replace clandestine cards with receiving the young men themselves on a clandestine basis with a serious danger of consequences, or go outside the home to put on makeup who knows where, let us try to make our daughters reflect. Let us first become our children's friends rather than mothers clothed in maternal authority. Let us first become sisters rather than teachers of our younger members, and open our hearts so that they will open theirs. This knowledge which the mother and teacher understands is so beautiful. It is so sweet to see that our little human or spiritual daughters have trust in us and conceal nothing from us, and in their dreams seek our hearts to deposit the dream, making them throb, or in their sufferings to weep upon them. How much more is obtained in this way, with this compassion, which knows how to direct without wounding. My daughters come to me still, and I have been a recluse for 11 years, in happiness or in sorrow, to tell me about their thrills on being in love, their ecstasies as wives, and their bliss as mothers. They bring me all the fruits of their flesh on their first ventures out of the house, and want me to kiss their treasures. They teach them my name as if it were that of a grandmother who loves them. They still come or write if an illness strikes them, if a misfortune grips them, or if death deprives them of a loved one. It is sweet to weep with me, for I always understand them. They depart afterwards, calmer, more serene, or, if distant, feel more serene and confident. I remain with their pain in my heart, and with my weariness as a sick person. But my soul sings because it knows that there is a heart less desolate than before. Sometimes, I confess, I could tell them all to go jump in the lake. Materially, I am so tired, run down, and aching, but I recall that Jesus was so often tired, and yet he never turned anyone away. On the cross, in agony, he was still able to comfort the thief through hope, his mother, the apostle, and the faithful women. The officers, too, except for the president, were all with me. The president, ever assisted by the diocesan president, had attempted to transfer me into Catholic women because I was over the age of 30. But there was a revolt by the members. Either I remained, or the president as well had to go, for she too was 33. And I remained. Heroism was needed to stay on. I was increasingly ill, and therefore more sensitive to the injustices which were being done me. When I still enjoyed Jesus' spiritual words, he had responded to a prayer of mine in which I begged him to break me with his love, to open me the way to heaven, that I must break myself, shattering all my self-esteem, all the human delight closed in my heart with the hammer of a love that was perfect, inasmuch as it was not supported by any supernatural comfort. Then I would be ready for heaven. Now I could say that I had touched that point. My self-esteem was trampled on by everyone, and by me more than anyone else, since out of love for God and for my neighbor, I had made myself like a grape in the tun which the vintager crushes and squashes under his feet. No comfort came from heaven, and none from creatures, only scoffing, satire, reproaches, betrayals, and labors, not even noticed, or noticed to draw motives therefrom for new jests. Whether I prayed or did not, spoke or remained silent, was immobile or in motion, I was always at fault, according to the majority. Only the souls I had led to God remained grateful and faithful to me, which makes me think of what we read in the Gospel concerning the faith in and gratitude to Christ of those who were Gentiles. Summer came. It was now really fatiguing to walk alone. I shall always remember August the 2nd, 1932. What pain going to St. Anthony's for the forgiveness of Assisi. I came back home arm in arm with Marta's mother. Footnote: Isolina Alberigi, 1871 to 1932, the mother of Marta di Ciotti, who would become the lifelong companion of the infirm Maria Valtorta. I came back home arm in arm with Marta's mother, with her already brushing with apoplexy, and me broken by heart trouble. We were a magnificent couple. We went tottering along. They must have taken us for two drunks. As soon as I was back home, I felt ill, but I then felt ill nearly every day. The association reopened. I resumed my office as the voice. Only the love of God could give me strength to continue. Marta's mother gave me the life of Galgani. Footnote 2. Gemma Galgani, 1878 to 1903. A stigmatized mystic from Lucca, canonized in 1940. Marta di Ciotti's mother, also from Lucca, had known her personally. Marta's mother gave me the life of Galgani, who came from her town. The great life written by Passionist Father Germano of St. Stanislas. She wanted me to give a talk on Gemma. I promised her I would. I confess that I was not at all attracted by Galgani. From the little I knew, she struck me as a fanatic, a person born in a time not her own, born several centuries too late. I always said, now sanctity is different. These things are medieval. But after reading that life, I changed my mind. Maria of the Cross could understand Gemma of Jesus, and Jesus' little violet, the violet that was dying of longing for the eternal Son, could join her faint scent and head veiled in penance to the mystical perfume and stellar corona, which emblems of the Passion decorate, of Christ's Passion flower. But first I had to speak of St. Joan of Arc, patroness of young women. It was fitting for me to speak of her. Among other things, it was the wish of my companions. I thus put her at the head of the list of the lectures to be delivered. That year I had thought of speaking of Gemma, of the Maid of Orleans, and of the blessed and venerable members of the House of Savoy, and of alternating these talks with others on good publications in which I planned on illustrating a certain author, and afterwards drawing lots to distribute 3 of his books to those attending, which I had, of course, purchased myself at cost, through the good offices of a dear woman friend, formerly an atheist, who was converted by my words. I said atheist, but anti-Catholic would be more exact. But I was afraid to talk about Joan of Arc. Why? Because I had felt that when I spoke of her, something irreparable would happen to me. I had thus put off the lecture for 3 years. Why such an idea? Heaven knows. One of the numerous warnings my soul received from other worlds. I wished to challenge that warning, and set about preparing the talk. I would speak of Gemma afterwards. On November 21st, in 3 hours, Marta's mother died. She was not in time to hear me speak of Gemma, and she went to heaven, for she was really a just woman. To hear the praises of the Seraph of Lucca sung by the magnificent angels, I was quite pained. Marta's mother loved me as a true friend, maternal, fraternal, holy. I loved Marta so much because she is the daughter of such a mother. I love her even more for this reason than for her own gifts, for I continue to love in her the soul of a saint who has returned to God but is not forgotten by me. I am certain of it. I shall open a parenthesis to reply to your letter, which has left me bewildered for several reasons. I shall explain to you tomorrow orally, but at this moment I ask why. Why that surprise? Don't spoil me, Father, for later I'll regret dying too much. But all joking aside, thanks, and thanks again. My hand says thank you, and my mouth as well. My soul will express the best thanks by prayer, and this is for the gift. I thank you also for understanding me so well in the moral and spiritual domains, and while you are still intent on your compassionate mission of consoling us sick people, to show you how grateful I am for your patient and good study of my soul, I shall try to respond to your questions. Preachers are needed and ought to be in perfect condition. We can otherwise bid farewell to the preaching of the gospel, but preachers should be supported by penitents. A radio makes no sound if the electricity is not turned on. Penitents, the souls offered in Holocaust, are the plug that connects the current of God to the souls of his public criers and of those listening. A bad comparison, but true. In particular, I also think that when a minister of God consumes himself hour by hour in the exercise of his ministry, without impatience, weariness, repugnance, fear, or excessive concern for his body, but in faithfulness to all the demands of his priestly work, with a cheerful will to act, and with inflamed charity, able to clasp to its heart a great sinner, as well as a pure soul. Since he sees God in all of them, he is a host soul. God himself takes charge of administering sacrifice to him hour by hour, and that is thus enough. We then, the idlers, who are not capable of anything but suffering and praying, supply all the rest each day to complete that measure of sacrifice which must be deposited in the bank of heaven, and with substantial interest is changed into assistance to the workers in the vine of Christ. We are the Marys, and you, priestly souls, are the Marthas of Jesus, who, it is true, said that the better part was the one chosen by the worshipping Mary, but who was very grateful to Martha, the industrious and practical woman of the house, who provided for the needs of his humanity. Footnote 1, Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. The priest, moreover, on ascending the steps of the altar every morning to celebrate the sacrifice, is at once Martha and Mary, since he worships and works. This is a picture of the widow Isolina Alberigi with her daughter Marta di Ciotti in a photograph from about 1925. As for the things I have read, which, whatever they have been, have always brought me good lights, I feel that even more than my good spirit, which projects itself upon everything, making the less good good, it is Jesus himself who keeps anything evil from entering me. In what way? Oh, very simple. He fills everything to the brim with himself, and that's enough. If you, Father, fill a glass to the brim and then try to add more ever so slowly from another, the excess overflows. Isn't that so? Jesus has filled the cup of my heart to the brim. Nothing else can enter. It alights upon it for an instant and slips away, often purified by the contact it has had with my Jesus. There is no merit on my part. I am so bewitched by Jesus that I see Jesus written even where devil is written. Hear Jesus speaking even where Lucifer speaks, and see Jesus on each and every single thing. My love for Mario, who I believe, however, has been dead for years, I shall later explain why I think so, is devoid of all human desire and regret. I love his soul, which I believe I have brought back with my pain, and I could not make a more beautiful gift to this creature that I have loved. Don't you think so? And now, to explain the sentence which has struck you, I have come to understand that the only real sorrows of a heart are those which come from God for our trial or our punishment. I shall respond to all your questions. How are you able to understand that a suffering comes directly from God? Answer: from what the soul experiences. For when suffering comes directly from God, it is always distinguished from pains coming from any other source. First of all, the pain which comes from God, no matter how harsh and penetrating it may be, is never separated from peace. This is the sign which is never lacking. Even if it sometimes seems not to be present, it is. As soon as the soul looks into its depth, and this always occurs, perhaps for an instant, but that's sufficient, it sees that there is a great peace in its suffering. Peace does not mean resignation. No, it means much more. It means beatitude, and the pain which comes from God is always accompanied by super-spiritual beatitude. This is one of the words which come to be formed spontaneously on our uncertain lips to speak of the indescribable. Super-spiritual, to me, for I am creating this word, means a beatitude in the spiritual part of the Spirit. It is not a play on words. It is a reality. I shall provide an example. A church is a building constructed for the worship of God. In a church, there are in turn chapels. In the chapels, altars. On the altars, tabernacles. In the tabernacles, the ciboria with the Eucharistic Jesus. If I go into a church, I do not touch the Eucharistic Jesus, but if I ascend to an altar, open a tabernacle, and take the lid off a ciborium, I can say I am touching Jesus. In the body is the soul, and in the soul the spirit. There is a peace of the soul, and this may be present in every pain borne with resignation, and there is a peace which reigns over the spirit, i.e., super peace. And this is always present when the pain comes from God, to elevate our spirit to a higher degree by purifying it of shadows and strengthening it as regards the weakness still degrading it. What does trial pain consist of? Answer: from a growth of love exclusively on our own part, while God seems to withdraw his love, leaving us alone. We call, and he does not answer. We ask, and he does not show. He has heard the request. Indeed, he often humiliates us by taking away precisely the possession which is dearest to us, and which we thought we had already obtained. On saying this, it appears negligible, but undergoing it is very painful. In the notebook I gave you today, I have already described what it means to suffer alone, without God to smile at us and respond to our moans. And then, punishment pain is understood at once because our conscience advises us that we have deserved it. Oh, I feel it immediately. Even before it arrives, my conscience tells me, you have erred. Now, if God punishes you, be ready to bow your head under the scourge striking you, and thank him, for you have deserved it, and by atoning for it at once, you won't have to do so in the hereafter. But I repeat, whether it is a trial or a punishment, peace remains. You will never hear of a saint who, because of the terrible trials he may have suffered, I'm speaking of spiritual trials, lost hope. Where there is hope, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is God. How are you able to grasp that a pain is a punishment? Answer: from the voice of conscience, which, as I told you, has already advised us that we have not acted properly, and also because, as we suffer it, we feel the soul becoming more lucid and lighter. From this we understand that the anguish he has made us undergo has been an expiation and cleansing for us. You speak to me of abandonment by God, which constitutes the greater punishment. This is true, but such an absence of God may also be produced by a blameworthy sluggishness on the part of the creature. Do you find sufficient light in yourself to say that the void has sometimes been produced by God alone, even granting that it is for his merciful ends? Answer: when a soul is in blameworthy inactivity, it does not notice at all whether or not God is present. It is a stupefied, abulic soul that vegetates without reflecting or perceiving. Sin, or even lukewarmness, dulls it to the point that the faculty of perception, the need to see, and the desire to nourish itself with supernatural food are extinguished within it. God then punishes, since it is right for him to punish, and compassionate to do so, for under the blow the soul sometimes rouses itself and recovers its senses. But I shall not deal with these souls now. I am speaking of the more or less awakened souls that try to work for the good Lord according to their capacity. They might perhaps be able to do more if they really put all their diligence into it, but they are certainly not inactive. They are thus souls wherein there is no absence of God on account of them, but by the will of God, who, as I said above, resorts to this potent arm either to call the soul to a more precise fulfillment of its filial duty, or to improve it by way of the painful trial and train it for higher and higher flights. And the soul, which feels the justice of this pain God inflicts upon it, finds its joy and peace in pain. On the other hand, the pain coming from humans, or worse, from the infernal domains, is always unjust and disturbs us more or less. It is, however, a pain which does not touch the peak potency of pain. That is, it does not transfix the spirit in its highest summit and most living part. It will make us cry out, weep, even curse. It will drive us mad at times, and at times make us die. But we shall die of illnesses of the flesh, go mad through mental derangement, curse as a result of moral convulsion, and sob out of general weakness. But the pain which comes from God and pierces our spirit does not make us fly off the handle. It raises us up to a loftier peace, seriousness, and charity. We suffer intensely, very intensely. It is an insatiable hunger growing hour by hour, which nothing can satisfy. We can then give all foods to our spirit to try to calm the languor, emptying it out. But neither works of mercy, nor sacraments, nor prayers, nor spiritual readings are able to fulfill its desire. It is God who is wanted, He alone, and He always keeps Himself hidden, withdraws higher and higher while we, with the arms of our desire upraised, agonize with love, invoking him. How many words one must write to state what we experience at every heartbeat. What is your conduct during these hours of darkness as regards God and your neighbor? Answer: the more God withdraws, the more I love him with my whole self, in a spirit of humility, patience, and submission, recognizing that I deserve it, making continual acts of faith, because I know, even if I do not feel him, that he is near me all the same, and I tell him so. Acts of hope, because I hope that in his goodness he will shorten the trial, and that through it I may merit a higher good. Acts of charity, because to urge him to return I tell him that I love him at any cost, and would love him even if he were no longer concerned about me. And acts of contrition, because I acknowledge I have sinned and deserve his punishment. Then, as for my neighbor, I make use of this trial of mine by offering God my pain, that other souls that do not seek him or seek him badly may be led to the fervent search for God. My hour of darkness thus becomes an hour of light. Do you feel agitated and spurred to manifest your restlessness externally? Answer: no. I get restless because I am flesh and blood, in addition to possessing a soul, on account of what can vex the flesh. But I never manifest this. I have stated and repeat that the pain which comes from God is very sharp, and is the only kind which is really pure pain, simple, perfect like God, but it is always joined to peace. Where there is peace, there is no agitation. I never force God to show himself with my tantrums. I entreat him to grant that I may see his face once again, which is the joy of our spirit. But then I patiently await that blessed moment.